I need to tell you guys something. Just between us, keep it between us. I feel like I can confide in you. You know you can confide in me. What I want to tell you is I don't know what day of the week it is. And I can repeat this admission and have been able to repeat this admission every day for about the past 2 weeks. What we do to ourselves in American society, not even sporting society, just American society in the month of December is festive but also cruel. So, I had a buddy of mine text me 2 days ago. And I asked him, you want to go get lunch? He said, I'm at work. And I said, why? Oh, it's Friday. I don't know. I know it's Sunday, but even now we're starting the show early. If you're watching the replay, that doesn't matter. But if you're watching live, thank you, because we're on Colin, 8 hours before we normally would be. We're jam-packed high atop, still illuminated downtown Nashville, Tennessee. I've got Rose Bowl travel coming up. So we had to shift our schedule around, and it's already been shifted around. So you know what? There is no design this time of the year. It just comes at you however it comes at you. Immunity. It is the college football playoff quarterfinal prediction special extravaganza today. And so I've got you Rose Bowl, I've got you Fiesta, I got you Peach, I got you, what's the other one? Well, whatever the other one is, I've got you that one too. So Sugar, we're going all 4 of those games. I got several different angles that I want to go at. I think that there are some really bright blinking red lights that, as far as I can tell, a lot of people are missing on these games. So I've got your winners there. We'll pick them against the spread. The model strongly against a team that it would normally be in lockstep with. Almost suspiciously against that team. And if you've watched for a long time, you probably know who that is. I got some portal stuff. All the quarterback dominoes have fallen, at least as much as we have in the portal right now. So remember the 5-day rule, kids. Remember the 5-day rule. Just because the portal's closing doesn't mean the portal's closing. Cam Ward opted out of the second half of a bowl game last night. Many of you have thoughts on it. I have thoughts on it. Didn't really, frankly, plan on talking about it on the show, but so many asked about it that I will talk about it on the show. We're jam-packed. They're watching us in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Lulu, Florida, Buffalo, New York, Ocean Springs, Mississippi, where I was this past week. Ocean Springs, Bay St. Louis, Long Beach, Biloxi. This stretch, they don't want me talking about it, but this stretch along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, probably the most underrated stretch of land in the United States of America, outside of a couple of places in Harris County, Georgia. So just awesome time down there. Appreciate those folks. Had a lot to eat, and we are paying for it dearly now. So before I begin the show, I've got to tell you something. As I pop the top on this Zevia, this is the only snack I have on set here, but we had a snack on TV yesterday. I'm sipping grape this morning, by the way, for those of you watching or not watching, listening on podcast. I've never been prouder of Cole Kublik in my life. And I don't like to toss around compliments to him because most of the time he doesn't deserve them. But yesterday was the big day for Kublik. So I got to tell you, Kublik's got a wife. Kublik's got a lovely wife, kids. He played at Auburn. He's been successful. He's got a great career. But point blank, yesterday was the most important day of Cole Kublik's life. I texted him and I said, your legacy will be defined by how you handle sideline duties in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Don't screw this up. That's what I told him. And Kublik, the thing about him is his sense of humor is a little bit different. For you, those of you who have watched him on the show, you know, but you've never hung out with him in person. I'm not sure that's a flex, but I can tell you I've hung out with him in person. And Kublik's got the same look on his face if he's at a Shane Gillis stand-up special as he does if he watches a guy get hit by a bus on the street. It's just this face right here. Only if he's laughing, it's this and this. So I didn't really know how he was going to handle this. He leaned into it. I got to tell you, I've never been more proud of our guy. I have to take some credit here, obviously, because I don't think anyone can deny that we have brought him out of his shell this year. And now it led to yesterday. And if you're watching, you know. If you watched the game, you know. If you're listening on podcast, I can't do this service. It's Kublik dressed up as a Pop-Tart. I can't do that service. You just got to go find the replay if you didn't watch. I saw Matt Berry, who I consider a friend of the program, tweeting out, I hope all the Pop-Tart festivities are done today. Judas. That's the only person who would say something like that. Judas. These people did really well yesterday. But Kublik was the shining star in a galaxy of them. So we are so proud of him. He called me at 11:34 p.m. last night. I was already in bed. I have no clue what he wanted. Probably a sugar high, figuratively and literally. I doubt he's gone to sleep. I'll talk to him at some point today. But I just want to admit publicly probably what I won't admit to his face, and that is we're really proud of him. One of ours, one of our own. We're really proud of him. Okay, let's dive into the show. We got a lot to get to. We are jam-packed. Oregon, Ohio State, the Rose Bowl. That's the game I'm going to. We will be out in Pasadena. We'll be on the sidelines for this game. Unbelievable. I grew up in rural Georgia. I have as much reverence for the Rose Bowl venue as anybody that grew up on the West Coast, as anybody who grew up in the Big Ten. I just do. I get it. You don't have to explain the Rose Bowl to me. I understand it. I understand the historical tie. This is historical Pac-10 versus Big Ten, and even though they're in the same conference now, we got it. We got what we want. This could, for all intents and purposes, be the national title game. We don't know that, but there is a school of thought out there that these are the two best teams in the country, and due to the jacked-up nature of the college football playoff format, this year at least, we're seeing them in the quarterfinals. You know what? Whatever. I'm going to enjoy it. So this is New Year's Day. It's in its traditional 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific kickoff. I am checking the weather. Pate State forecast right now is we're going to get ourselves a nice low 70s, mostly clear day, just enough cloud cover for a little sunset filtration. It's great. It's wonderful. This was a 5 Chalai Classic when these teams played earlier this year. We were at that game as well. It was in Eugene. It was awesome. I think 32-31 was the final. So what do we see here? Well, we talk about the freeze point a lot on the show. Of course, the freeze point is a very familiar theme with teams like these because these are two of maybe the best teams in the country. So there aren't many teams that can hang with them. And the whole concept of the freeze point is if you can't get down to 32 degrees, then you're not going to freeze. And most of these teams, figuratively, cannot meet the freeze point against Ohio State and Oregon. But they meet each other's freeze point. So you got to be really careful in games like these. When you look at Ohio State versus everyone else this year, it doesn't matter so much. Not because those games didn't happen, but because the game against Oregon will be different. Just like the first one was different. And I don't say that disrespectfully to Ohio State because the same thing applies to Oregon. Ohio State and Oregon can do things to each other that no other team in the country is probably capable of doing to them. But it's especially a key for Oregon because they're the only team to score 17 plus on Ohio State. Every other team scored 17 or less. Oregon hung 32 on them the first time due to athletes, due to matchups, and due to precision. You remember Evan Stewart going off in this game. 7 catches, 149. Tez Johnson and him combined for 14 for 224, 2 touchdowns. They had 6 explosive passes in this game. That accounts for a quarter of that stat given up all year by Ohio State. So, the precision point, the precision piece, if you will, to me that's the most important. Because if you watch Dillon Gabriel all year, if you watch this Oregon offense all year, but you watch them especially against Ohio State, very rarely is a guy just running free. It's precision. Everything is just boom, boom, boom. It's timing, it's rhythm, it's poise, it's precision. And that's the benefit of having a guy like Dillon Gabriel. And you can look at it going into a game in a rematch and say, oh, we got to shut him down, foolishly. Or you can look at it and say, well, we understand you don't shut a guy like that down. We can limit him. We can fluster him. We can maybe make him do what we want him to do, but we're not going to shut him down. Nor is Oregon going to shut down Will Howard. So that's the other part of this. The quarterback play in this game the first time, I think you remember Gabriel. Do you remember Will Howard? Because up until about 5 minutes ago against Tennessee, the only other 300-yard passing performance he had had this year was against Oregon. They both played exceptional ball. Both teams may have played their best game to date in the game they played against each other. So if we get a repeat of that, could be another 5 Chalai Classic, could be an instant classic. But here's the real key, because I don't think you'll shut Will Howard down. I especially think the juice that they've got to be feeling as a team and as a program coming off the Tennessee game and the way they chose to attack Tennessee being the total antithesis of the way they went about it against Michigan has got to have them feeling really good, but that's not the key to me. The key to me is I know Will Howard will have success throwing the ball. I know that. I think I know that at least. If he doesn't, it would surprise me. I'll put it that way. That wasn't what cost Ohio State the first time around. What cost Ohio State, I'm standing right there on the field watching them run for 122 in the first half. And you think, well, they got really geared up. It's going to be a downhill assault in the second half. 19 yards rushing in the second half against Oregon. And it's not that Oregon was up 2 or 3 scores and they were playing catch-up. This was back and forth. One possession leads either way the whole game. I've got in my hand a piece of paper that tells me what teams have done against Oregon this year. See, Ohio State's been pretty shut down defensively outside of playing Oregon. Oregon's given up some points. They've faced 3 college football playoff teams this year. They gave up 34 to Boise, 31 to Ohio State, 37 to Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. You can call that a padlock stat if you want to. I don't. Here is the more interesting / concerning number. Rush yards per game in those 3 matchups, they gave up 218 on the ground. Oregon has averaged allowing over 215 rushing yards against the college football playoff teams that they faced this year, which is important because against all the other competition, 98.5. So when they face legitimate teams, when they face those teams that meet the freeze point in terms of rushing attacks, they really meet it against Oregon. You can run the ball against Oregon, but there's a reason Oregon's undefeated because it's not one thing and one thing only that you have to do to beat them. Ohio State, here was the issue last time. It's kind of an either-or defensively, and I think this will track in this game as well. I think there's a ton of carryover from the last game to this game. I feel like Ohio State's got to get one or the other. See, last game, they did not get to Gabriel, but they also didn't limit explosive plays. You may think, okay, conventional wisdom, if you've got an elite defense, is you send the house, and you may expose yourself to some big plays, but the trade-off is what? The trade-off is you get to the quarterback. So you affect him, maybe you force turnovers, and in the end, you don't care that you gave up a couple of explosive plays because in the aggregate, the turnovers, the pressure, the third and longs you forced, they were enough to where with your own scoring potential, it tilted the game in your favor. Well, last time they played Oregon, they didn't get to Gabriel, but also Oregon had 6 scoring drives, and 4 of those 6 scoring drives were 5 plays or less. So Gabriel stays clean, and they still throw the ball down the field, and they still hit explosive plays. That's the stuff that can't happen. You don't have to shut them down. You don't even have to completely eliminate the explosive play, but man, you got to get more pressure on him than you did last time. Or if you don't, you've got to make them march down the field. Now, my assumption here, and this is not getting in the head of Jim Knowles a whole heck of a lot, but my assumption is they don't look at the matchup and say, we're going to pressure Dylan Gabriel, we're going to get him on the ground 4 or 5 times, we're going to do to him what Georgia's done to Quinn Ewers. I don't think they'll do that because I think they understand how tough a task that is. Gabriel's really elusive. He is really good at moving in the pocket and moving the launch point and extending plays. Your best bet is to look across the field and say, if you're going to score, you're going to do it in the 8, 10, 12 play variety instead of the 3, 5, 6 play variety. And if Oregon does that, if they put together that lethal and methodical an offensive performance against you, well, they were the better team, and you tip your cap. But you're Ohio State. You got the best defense in the country, so you don't think they can do it. That's exactly how you should feel. Think about the coaching staffs here. I said this the first time, and I'll say it again, because anybody I talked to in the coaching world about this matchup said the first time around, Ryan Day and Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly should be an advantage over Dan Lanning and Will Stein and Tosh Lupoy. Now, they said that the first time around. And candidly, I thought Oregon outcoached Ohio State the first time around. I always hesitate to say that because you can't really know. So on the very surface, it felt like that the first time around. The people behind the scenes are saying the exact same thing the second time around. In fact, they're going one better. They're saying, boy, if you're lucky enough, can you imagine the audacity? If you're lucky enough to get them one time, that even lessens your chances more that your big 3 are going to match and exceed their big 3 the second time around. By the way, the thinking there is just experience. Coaches are pretty old school in their thought about what wins in the postseason. Players, first and foremost, but they both got players. So then if you're looking at staffs and caliber and quality of staff, there's just a whole lot more length of tooth, as Meemaw would say, over on that Ohio State sideline. I mean, Chip Kelly's been a head coach longer than Stein and Lupoy have been coordinators by a mile, and Dan Lanning is even still a relatively young coach. So Here is my other wild card. Before we take a look at what the model thinks, here's my other wild card in this game. What is the lasting impression in our minds? You don't remember anything about Oregon because it feels like 9 years since Oregon's played. Your lasting memory of Ohio State is pretty fresh, and it's frozen because they played it in like 20-degree conditions, and that is them bombing away on Tennessee. And coming off the Michigan game and how toxic it was, and they opened that offense up, they let the horses run, they threw it to Jeremiah Smith early and often, he took over the game, Egbuka was there for him, Will Howard felt himself like Will Howard probably hasn't felt all year. That's the lasting impression. I'll tell you what the best defensive minds in the country can do. If they're next up and you play over your skis offensively, especially throwing the ball right before you play them, what you'll find throughout history is sometimes you assume that offense will tilt on you a little bit. Tilting out of confidence. Tilting because they may be a little more top-heavy than they should be. They may lean into the pass a little bit more than they should. And you think to yourself, we're good enough, we're skilled enough, and we're tactical enough to where might we want to lay back and let them feel that way about themselves? Might we want to let them throw on the blinders like a horse in a horse race? Horse throws on the blinders, they don't see to their left or right. Now, the horse is not supposed to see to his left or right. People are. Quarterbacks are. But sometimes, if you get that locked in and you're that sure that you're going to do something well against a defense, that defense, especially if it's got maybe like a Dan Lanning sort of mind to it, it can take advantage of that, and you can lean and lean and lean, and you tip, and you end up playing right into their hands. I still think the run game is what wins the game for Ohio State if it does win it. They're going to get theirs through the air. I also think they can lose the game through the air. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. Let's take a look at what our friends over at FanDuel have right now. They've got Ohio State minus 2.5. The model is right at a pick'em. So we think there's a little smidge of inflated value on Ohio State right now that's just a byproduct of the last game. If I ran a sports book, I'd put the exact same number up. Because if I put pick'em up, I would get drowned in Ohio State money. I changed my mind on how I think this game's going to go, ironically, after the Ohio State-Tennessee game. I believe that the result you see in the Rose Bowl will make you look and say, boy, how did it shift that radically? Or it may make you say, how does an Ohio State team that did what they did to Tennessee get beat? Well, it's because you get different versions of a team every week. But I don't think Ohio State's going to play poorly at all. I think they're going to play phenomenally. I just think Oregon's that good. So I am slightly leaning Oregon to win this game. They would cover in the aggregate, and I'm not necessarily betting it because I think there's better value out there. But I think Dan Lanning and Oregon, with more weeks to prepare, are going to sit out there, bring them into Pasadena. I think one or two quarterback mistakes on the side of Ohio State ends up being the difference in the game. Academy Sports and Outdoors would like me to tell you that if you are an Ohio State fan and you're aggravated with that pick, just forget it ever happened. And Ohio State fans need to know that even if I don't sound like your friend right now, our folks at Academy are still your friends. They've still got your tailgating gear. You guys ever been to Pasadena? Actually, probably most of you have because you're that blessed a fan base. But even if you're going out there and you've been there before, if you need to restock up, then Academy is your place. And I would also advise you, academy.com can come through in the pinch. And listen, there may be a half-decent chance I'm wrong on my prediction, and there may be a half-decent chance that you guys are moving on to a semifinal. And although this read is not supposed to be targeted at Ohio State, apparently it is today, you guys can go anytime you want to. In person, which I recommend, or online, academy.com. They have got all of the tailgating hookup. Also, just remember, some of you dropped the ball. Let's call it like it is. Okay, it is now December 29th. Some of you have dropped the ball. Some of you are on the outs with your relatives, family members, loved ones, friends, formerly. It's nothing that a trip to Academy Sports and Outdoors can't fix. I don't want this for you. I don't want this for you guys. There's no reason that January gets ruined because you dropped the ball in late December. Look how much Kublik redeemed himself by throwing on the Pop-Tart outfit. You can do the same in your life by making up for and atoning for your Christmas failures by going to Academy Sports and Outdoors. Now, if you really want to be big-brained, you can just go there and start gearing up for next year. That is probably a bridge too far for someone like me. But for those of you who are forward-thinking, it's not the worst idea in the world. All right, let's roll on. How about this live audience we have on a day where we're doing the show at a totally abnormal hour, so much so that I have coffee. Along with the Zevia, I have coffee on set. Unlike the Zevia, the coffee, while also zero sugar, is in a totally nondescript cup. Listen to this. You can tell nothing about that cup based on what it looks like or what it sounds like. But I will tell you this. This next game was the one we were going to if we didn't go to the Rose Bowl. Here we go. Notre Dame, Georgia, New Year's Day, Sugar Bowl, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Kickoff, a lot of you, Peepaw, I'm looking at you. You'll have to watch SportsCenter the next morning or CBS Sports HQ the next morning to get your final score. McElroy and McDonough on the call here. Going to be a good one. Going to be low scoring. The total at FanDuel right now, 44.5. So Notre Dame is in a position where they could get the biggest win under Marcus Freeman thus far. I feel that way about this game. I didn't feel that way about the Indiana game, although it may classify as that. This right here is where you really test yourself. They run the ball. They play great defense. They are excellent in turnover margin. I think they're third in the country. They're first in takeaways. Georgia is like middle of the pack in those categories. And you also know, or should know by now, that Carson Beck's gone. He's hurt. He's done for the year. He is declared for the NFL draft. And so it is Gunnar Stockton. Georgia has traded in their Lamborghini for an old F-150. I'm not making that up. That's what those guys drive, respectively. I have no idea what Riley Leonard drives, and it's probably not important for the sake of a preview video. But Carson Beck is hurt, and he's out, and that's a big injury. I am of the opinion that Riley Mills being out for Notre Dame is just as big an injury. I had a little back and forth, a little spat, if you will, with one of my Notre Dame brethren, believe it or not, of which I have several. And I said that to him, and he said, "Bro, you're just hating on Notre Dame." And I said, first off, people got to stop thinking that every time someone offers a critique, it's hating on Notre Dame. I don't hate on Notre Dame. I actually get criticized for being a Notre Dame homer in the South, just so you guys know. But the Riley Mills injury, I told him, you can't be pumping up this dude all year and rightly telling me how great he is, only for you to discount the impact of the injury when he's gone. He said, "Oh, that's a fair point." No, he didn't. He still called me stupid. And that's why we haven't spoken since then. The quarterback dynamic here for Georgia is a layered dynamic. Okay, so if you just passively watch college football, like the casual college football fan looks and says, Georgia was a favorite in the preseason because of why? Because Carson Beck came back. Carson Beck was the preseason Heisman favorite. He was the favorite to be the top overall drafted quarterback, etc., etc. So standard protocol. If you lose a guy like that and you're in the playoffs, you're at a big disadvantage. That's a fair way to think. It may be the way to think. I think it's a little more layered than that. Georgia had become quarterback-centric under Carson Beck. At no point should Georgia's program be quarterback-centric because Georgia can acquire talent too well to make themselves quarterback-centric. And what I mean is, unlike in the NFL, where the quarterback is the entire franchise, in college football, talent acquisition is different. So in college football, programs like Georgia, and there are only a few of them, can stack a whole lot more talent, even in the portal era, than your run-of-the-mill mid-tier Power 4 team, which means if you make yourself quarterback-centric, you just disproportionately enhance the risk of one injury derailing your season. And there's no excuse for a Georgia to be in that kind of position. Wake Forest, yeah, if they get a star quarterback, Miami this year, Cam Ward, without him, big difference. Georgia shouldn't be that way. Now, have they or will they be that way? Well, we have a very small sample size. So Carson Beck goes down at halftime. Georgia's trailing to Texas. And in a very small sample size, Gunnar Stockton leads Georgia in a come-from-behind win against Texas. What can we make of that? In terms of extrapolating his stat categories and stat line, maybe not a whole lot. The intangibles, what I took away. I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that game. Don't look at the box score. That does you no good. Go back and watch the game. Watch the body language, watch the synergy, watch the energy. This is stuff you don't have to know a whole lot about X's and O's to pick up on, by the way. I don't care if you've never watched football. If you know human interaction and you know what you feel like when you're around someone who fires you up and who energizes you versus someone who doesn't bring that out in you, watch the Georgia team and how they respond to the second best quarterback on the roster versus how they played when the first best quarterback on the roster was on the field. It is not up to me to diagnose that. I'm just looking at it observationally and telling you what I see. You can't deny that, by the way, if you watch that. Now, that doesn't mean you win. Notre Dame could paste you by 25. But I do think it's important to note. So, the thing that we get here is the quarterback run. We certainly trade off arm talent. Gunnar Stockton, I don't think, can throw the ball like Carson Beck can. And he had an ugly interception against Texas in that limited sample size. What we do get is the quarterback run. Now, the reason I mention that is because I think Georgia was at their best offensively this year when they had that element to their offense. Now, it was Carson Beck who did it, but the Tennessee game, I don't think it's any coincidence that it was their best passing game. Number one, because Tennessee's secondary leaves a lot to be desired. But number two, because Carson Beck ran the ball that day as well. Gunnar Stockton's got no problem doing that. Like, Gunnar Stockton will run into a freight train. I know, because he did. It was a Texas defensive back, hollering choo-choo in the alley. But play action working off that, I think, could be effective here. And I think a healthy Trevor Etienne could be effective here. So that's the Georgia offensive look. Like, in other words, I told you it was layered. I don't think it's nearly as detrimental as it looks. I thought Carson Beck would struggle against Notre Dame. Like, there was no world to me where Georgia was going out there and hanging 35 on Notre Dame. That was never going to happen. So this was a game that was always going to be compacted and played in the teens, 20s-ish. You know my backup quarterback theory, or if you don't, in college football, unlike the NFL, sometimes you lose your quarterback and an ultra-talented group of players like Georgia has in the aggregate can take it upon themselves to raise their level of play to the point where the cumulative effect of that is you end up playing a better version of your ball than you did with the starter in. And it makes no sense. It shouldn't make any sense. But it's understanding human psychology and the human nature around all of this. Now, with Notre Dame, you don't have to be psychological. You just need to know they can hit a home run on the ground at any point against anyone. I grew up in Georgia. I know my friends back home will listen to that, and you will scoff at it, and you will say, okay, so he did it against Indiana. Yeah, I saw that 98-yard run against Indiana. What did he do the rest of the day? Well, I got it on a piece of paper here. The rest of the day, Notre Dame, if you take away the 98-yard run, it's always fun. Take away my best play. Don't take away your best, just take away my best. What else did I do? 34 carries, 95 yards. Very pedestrian the rest of the day. But you know what? You can't take away the big run. It counted. It wasn't an experimental play they ran in the dark during a commercial break. It counted. And it also impacted the rest of the game. Okay, so Jeremiah Love rips off that 98-yard run. As it turns out, that was probably ball game, even though we didn't know it at the time. There will be a school of thought that you'll just have to prove wrong if you're Notre Dame. And that will be, yeah, but what you did against Indiana is not going to work against Georgia. You won't do that against Georgia. Why won't they do that against Georgia? This is what they can add in the hype video down in Athens. Jeremiah Love can run it explosively against anyone. That includes Georgia. Georgia's 59th in the country in explosive runs allowed. And break. I just know some programs out there are very fond of taking all the motivational meat that they can off of the bone that is our show. And I got no problem with it. I'm happy to help wherever I can, guys. Happy to help. He may rip some explosive runs against Georgia, too, is my point. And this is not a vintage Georgia defense. It has not been all year, except they made Texas look foolish. But there have been teams move the ball explosively on the ground and through the air against Georgia. I think Notre Dame can at least do one of those. Georgia, what do they struggle with? Okay, this is where I disagree with many people. In the past, we've seen Kirby Smart struggle against what? Against running quarterbacks, right? No, I disagree with that. I haven't seen Kirby Smart and his defense at Georgia or Alabama struggle against running quarterbacks. I've seen him struggle against true dual threat quarterbacks. This year, they struggled against Milroe. Milroe had 117 on the ground, but Milroe also threw the ball on him. They struggled against Haynes King, 110 on the ground, but Haynes King could also throw the ball on you, presented the threat to throw it. Jackson Dart had 6 yards per carry, but Jackson Dart could throw the ball on you. You had to respect that. There was balance in his game. This will all come down to Georgia and whether they respect Riley Leonard's ability to throw the ball. And there's really only one way to earn it. And it's not being 101st passing, which Notre Dame is right now. It's completing some balls down the field or even intermediate down the field early in the game. Otherwise, they'll just tee off on you. They'll clamp down. There is no one-dimensional quarterback that beats Kirby Smart. So you can't be one-dimensional. That's the long and short of that. You just can't be one-dimensional. The game script also is extremely important in this game. Game script, I think, is do I want to say this? Yeah. Game script is as important in the Georgia-Notre Dame game as it is any of these quarterfinal games, only because of how little we've watched Notre Dame trail this year. It's a huge testament to the team. It's not a weakness. It's a strength that they've played ahead the whole year. But what it does is it leaves this great unknown. Like you can convince yourself, like I have, that the Northern Illinois game's a distant memory and it was week 2 and it has nothing to do with this game. Well, the only reason that I would bring that up is because that's kind of the last time I watched them trail and try and catch up and they couldn't do it. So, yes, I agree. That's ancient history. Nothing about that game will impact this game, but there's a dynamic that was present in that game. And it's, what if Georgia gets up 14-3 and you're forced to throw the ball, which you will be? How do you play? That's an open-ended question. I have seen them so rarely in that spot, I quite literally don't know how they'd play in that game. I'd be uncomfortable if I'm a Notre Dame fan, if they're in that position. But I would not be that uncomfortable if I was Georgia. See, this is why game script and start is so important. Notre Dame can't play from behind. At least I view the game that way. Georgia, I don't care. Georgia has trailed like half a dozen times at the half in games they've won this year. Georgia's trailed constantly. They've been very bad at starting the game strong. Now, they've been great. I didn't check on this. I would imagine there aren't many better second-half teams in the country than Georgia this year. So the trade-off to that is Notre Dame looks at that and says, well, but if we get up on you, you haven't come from behind on a defense like ours. That is probably true. That's why we're going to play the game. So, Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. Let's take a look at what FanDuel thinks. Georgia right now at FanDuel is favored by 1.5. The model has it at a pick. I am going to pick Georgia to win this game and cover. And I think Georgia is in a great position to shock a lot of people. I think Georgia's in position to really surprise a lot of people. Like, they're either going to wilt and Gunnar Stockton can't get it done, or they're going to have kind of the cattle prod to the side of the neck of college football, because this is where Georgia's program has to win. It is not a singular mission. It is not a star-laden team. It's not a quarterback-centric team anymore. It's Georgia football has to go win. And that's not what you're saying about these other teams. You look at Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart. You look at Ohio State, you got several names on the defensive side of the ball. You got Will Howard, you got Jeremiah Smith. Likewise with Texas, that is not how you're talking about Georgia. And you either get scared by that or you adopt the mentality that I imagine Kirby Smart and the folks in that building have. And they just relish that. They love that. Like, that's the dynamic they crave. You go recruit all these star players, but you want them to blend into the overall system. Well, here's where you prove it. Here's where you really find out what that block G stands for. You really find out what that G means in the overall landscape, because you're in a position where people are going to doubt you. You're in a position, I would imagine, I don't know what the split will be. A ton of folks will pick Notre Dame to win this game. And I am on the other side. I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game. So I'm going to believe that there's still a little something to that culture dynamic. Because, see, Notre Dame's got a good one, too. So it's good on good, culture-wise. And a lot of these commonalities in the way that they go about their business are similar. That's why I love this game. It's the one we would have gone to if we weren't at the Rose Bowl. Give me Georgia very close to win this game. Yep, okay. No, we do disagree. I'm feeling a lot of disagreement in the live chat over here. I almost never pick Georgia, John says. Let me address that. Colin, you know what? Hold on. Don't put this in the clip of the video. All right, here's what happens in our world. This is not a complaint. We have no real hard out today, so I can just go as long as I want to. if you ever pick games on any kind of public platform, there's this lunatic fringe, as some in our business would call them. There's this lunatic fringe who is convinced that if you pick them to lose a game, you hate them, obviously. And also, you have never picked them to win a game. So this year, I've dealt with it with Georgia a lot. So I picked Georgia to lose the Bama game. And I got told, of course you're going to pick against Georgia. Well, they actually lost the game, so I was right. They didn't come back and apologize. I picked them to lose to Texas, and they won. I ended up picking them to lose to Ole Miss, and they lost. So if you're keeping track at home, through those 3 games, that is a 66.7% win percentage. I then picked them to beat Tennessee. They won. So I was 3 of 4. And yet going into the SEC championship game, where I did pick Texas, I will admit it, I picked Texas, we were bombarded. Colin, do you remember this? We were bombarded with people claiming I hated Georgia because I'd picked against them all year. No, I had been right most of the year, and I hadn't picked against Georgia all year. But the times I had picked against them, I'd largely been right. So now I'm dealing with it with Notre Dame. That's my whole point. I'm looking at it in the live chat now. I'm dealing with it with Notre Dame. It's probably people who are newer to the show. It's got to be. Because anyone who's been around for a while and who actually knows how I feel about Notre Dame would know that I have had to fight with torch and pitchfork in hand against allegations of Notre Dame homerism on the show. That's been a long-standing battle I've had to fight. On multiple fronts, I've had to fight it. So, I don't know, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is going to balance the scales a little bit. I went to 2 quick trips yesterday. Quick try, plural of quick trip? Quick trippy. I went to 2 quick trips yesterday. I was in Saraland, Alabama. I was in Bartow, Georgia, because I had to drive back up to Nashville yesterday. And I have got to tell you something. Not only is Quick Trip fueled the whole new Saturday tour, obviously, and we thank them. But the cold brew on tap, I have talked about on air. But I don't think we had ever showed a picture. And I'm not going to have Colin show you the picture right now, but I put a picture on Twitter yesterday, at Josh Pate CFB, because when I stopped by that Quick Trip, I went in there, and sure enough, there it is. They should put, like, better lighting on it. It's just amazing looking. Imagine all of your favorite cold brew, and it's on tap. You literally walk up, and you pull the tap, and you hold the cup under it. It's none of the old school press the button stuff. That's so 2023. No, this is cold brew on tap, different flavors. All the handles are carved out of rich mahogany. No, that's a lie. But they look really good, really well designed, really colorful. If you don't even like cold brew, you still want to pull it just to watch it pour out. So we appreciate Quick Trip. That's not even what they want me to talk about. I mean, you know, they've got gasoline out in the parking lot too, but the cold brew on tap, it's been great. I've been looking forward to it. I'm still petitioning them to get us one of those taps that we can just put on set. Doesn't even have to have coffee coming out of it. I just think it would be a nice addition. Okay, let's continue to roll on. Remember, if you're here, man, you're joining us at a time we never do the show. We never do the show in the morning or afternoon. We usually always do it at night, but I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask. And I'll probably ask that again in a second. So ignore the redundancy. Sometimes when Colin cuts the individual videos, we find that there's a different audience that watches the individual videos. So sometimes I have to weave a request in there because people who don't listen to the full live show would never have heard it. Okay. Now we got some games that everyone believes they know the answer to already. And I do too. And I'm nervous about it. Texas plays Arizona State New Year's Day at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. High noon from Atlanta. It's the Peach Bowl. It's on ESPN. I have a theory that I'm working on. I'm just workshopping this theory in my head. Are we looking at a college football playoff look-ahead game? It's not supposed to be the case in a playoff format, obviously, but Texas is coming off playing Clemson, big brand name. Texas, if they won this game, would play either Ohio State or Oregon in the next round. And they've got Arizona State in the meantime, and they're favored by 12.5 at FanDuel. I have seen nobody pick Arizona State to win the game outright. Nobody's going to pick them to win the game outright, at least with any money on the line. And so it feels like a look-ahead spot. It feels like a little letdown look-ahead spot, and that's not supposed to exist in the playoff. And yet here it is. We also get to test in this game the bye week versus the rest theory, and Texas had to play against Clemson. Arizona State had the first round bye. What's the impact of that? We don't know. We're about to find out. This game hinges on Quinn Ewers, as it always was going to. Let me break it down for you very simply. If Texas plays well, this is a 45-second video. If Quinn Ewers plays A-, you know what? If Quinn Ewers plays B+ or better, Texas will win this game. Whether they cover or not, they will win the game. They'll probably, if he plays A- or better ball, they'll win and cover. And that's if Arizona State plays at their peak, because Texas is better than Arizona State. So there is something that has to go wrong on the Texas side in conjunction with things going right on the Arizona State side. That's very basic. I think most of us understand that. I think Arizona State understands that. So there's another way this game could go. And Texas games have done this year with Quinn Ewers a few times. And that is the kind of game where you look at the box score at halftime, and Texas looks like they're dominating. And you say that phrase that I have said with Texas 2 or 3 times this year. Texas has dominated everywhere but the scoreboard. Have you heard yourself say that? You look at total yards, you look at yards per carry, you look at total plays run, and all of these categories indicate a lopsided game. Then you look at the scoreboard and it's 13-6. What's happening here? Well, what's happening is you're somewhat limited because the dynamic at quarterback is not such that you can stretch the game. And if that happens in this game, then Arizona State could pull an upset. Arizona State, at the very least, would be in it. Arizona State's defense is top 25 in takeaways as well. So there is that factor there. They've got a sneaky good run defense. I don't know that they're going to shut Texas down, but they got a sneaky good run defense. Here is the big concern for me. If you're trying to paint the picture for the upset, in Texas's losses, a.k.a. when they've played Georgia, Georgia has harassed Quinn Ewers. They've sacked him like 1,000,000 times. Arizona State is 120th in pressure rate. They do not affect the quarterback. They do not get home. It is not their bread and butter. It's not their forte. They've outscored folks this year. That is not how they've won games. And they will not succeed if that number holds up against Texas. Too many playmakers. They're too balanced offensively. And even Quinn Ewers, if you give him time, will pick you apart. Arizona State stars, therefore, have to go off here. There's no hidden factor. There's no player that's going to come out of the woodwork that you haven't heard of all year. It's going to have 9 catches for 127 yards. That won't happen. They've only faced 2 top 30 defenses this year, and they scored 28 or less both times. They're down their number 1 receiver. So Leavitt has to do what he's been doing. You know, Leavitt's got 3+ passing touchdowns 6 of his last 8 games. Cam Scatterbo has ran for 150 or more, 150 from scrimmage, 3+ touchdowns. He's done that in his last 3 games. So they've peaked at the right time. They're big-time players, have made the big-time plays in big-time games. The old phrase they have adhered to. So this is the biggest moment now. Arizona State, I think, is an underdog and should be in this game, but I'll tell you what they won't do. I'll tell you what Kenny Dillingham won't do. I'll tell you what Marcus Arroyo won't do. And that is repeat the mistakes that Indiana made against Notre Dame. See, Indiana got in a pressure, high-leverage position. They were the second best team on the field. They were the second most talented team on the field. And they tried to play Notre Dame heads up. And they tried to play even conservatively a little bit. And they just imploded in on themselves. Like the game crushed them. The moment crushed them. Texas could crush Arizona State. Texas could win this game by 30. It will not be because Arizona State refused to let their horses run. Kenny Dillingham will open the stall, and he will yell, "Giddy up," and he'll slap him on the butt if he needs to. Probably not on air. You do that stuff in the tunnel. But these guys will be given every chance to succeed. There will be no stone left unturned. There will be no risk untaken. And so they will leave with chambers empty. And if they leave chambers empty and they look up on the scoreboard and Texas won 38-20, then so be it. But they will not leave Mercedes-Benz Stadium thinking to themselves, man, we never even used this. We never even did that. We left so much in the tank. Nope, that will not be Arizona State. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. Colin, our number at FanDuel right now is Texas minus 12.5. Look at what the model thinks. The model has notoriously been drunk on Texas since its inception. And lo and behold, here in, what will be the year of our Lord 2025 by the time this game is kicked off, the model has just punted on Texas. The model has turned over a new leaf. The model's New Year's resolution is horns down, apparently. It only has Texas winning by 9. You may be thinking to yourself, okay, it's still got Texas winning. Yeah, that's a 3.5-point deviation from the spread in a playoff game, where all of our other numbers are right in line with FanDuel, because this time of year, there is no huge value to be found on these numbers. So, I don't know what the model thinks it knows here. I think what it knows is what I just said. Arizona State's got some good players. Arizona State's playing really hot football. I could see Arizona State playing as loose as can be and Texas being a little tight in the second half. Could the pucker factor impact this game? Could. We'll see. I think Arizona State will keep this a little bit closer than maybe Van Tool thinks and maybe a lot of other folks think. So I'll follow the model here. I'll take Arizona State to keep it within the number. I will take Texas to win. I don't think big upsets are going to happen in the playoffs this year and years moving forward. Like I don't think that's the way this tournament is going to work. But I'll take a chance there on Arizona State plus the points. I may even bet some money on it. We'll see. They're watching us in Bowling Green, Kentucky, Norfolk, Virginia, Tucson, Arizona, or as you might know it, Tucson, Arizona. Let me finish this coffee. Hold on. Yeah, might as well get that out of the way. I know it's been all predictions so far. I got portal stuff. I've got busted predictions. I've got Cam Ward opting out of half of a bowl game. Yes, friends, we will touch on all of it. Don't go anywhere. Penn State, Boise State. This is the first playoff game. This is New Year's Eve. This is 7:30 Eastern on ESPN from the Fiesta Bowl. Uh-oh, guys. Uh-oh. Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. You know what that means. Do you? No, I don't know what it means. I really hope you know what it means. Someone's got to tell me. Because I kid you not, I have been asked that like 19 times on every radio hit I've done. Josh, you know what Boise and the Fiesta Bowl means, right? I don't know. They're going to sleep in Phoenix the night before? What does it mean? Oh, you mean something that happened when these dudes were what, in first grade? Will impact this game? Is that what I'm being told? So I had much fun as the next guy watching that game. I was working in the fabric warehouse in Columbus, guys, when that Fiesta Bowl, Boise versus Oklahoma, went down. It was a seminal moment. I don't even know how to spell seminal, but it was a seminal moment in my young college football adolescence. It was incredible. I call it the original upset. I think of that upset before App State over Michigan, before Stanford over USC, the Boise State-Oklahoma upset. That's the upset in college football because of how unexpected it was, how ignorant we were to the dynamics of those games still back then. I get what happened in the building. I don't think it has much impact on this game. So, advantage Boise being in the Fiesta Bowl? No. Advantage Boise for not having to play last week? Maybe that's an advantage. Either this goes really good for Boise or it goes really bad for Boise. It is what we call an either-or game. Exhibit 1, for what I mean by that. Boise is number 2 in the country in sacks. Sounds great, right? Heads up Drew Aller, in for a long night. Well, they're 31st in pressure rate. How do you even get that? How's a team in the 30s in pressure rate, but they're number 2 in sacks? Well, the way you get that is they've got to send more than 4, a lot. And if you look at how Boise does get home, they get home by blitzing extra guys. That's not a crazy concept. It makes sense, We used to do an 8-man football all the time. They do it in 11-on-11. If they get home, they get home. As is evidenced on this piece of paper, they're number 2 in the country in sacks. Here is the problem that I think will present itself against Penn State. If they don't get home, they are 111th in explosive plays allowed. There's no in between. It is either or. They either get to Drew Aller, and if they do, long day for Penn State, they'll grind that offense to a halt, and Boise will probably end up right there at the end or pulling the outright upset. Or they don't get home, but they try to, and they leave their guys exposed. And the thing about Penn State's passing game is a lot of it's tailbacks and tight ends. It's not so much wide receivers. So those checkdowns, Drew Aller's used to that stuff. He's used to not waiting for an out and up. He's used to not waiting for long developing passing routes and concepts. Either you get home or you're in the 100s in explosive plays. And also, another key stat to just tuck away, Boise defensively 127th in the country in missed tackles. So that's exhibit 1 of how it's all or nothing. Here's exhibit number 2. Ashton Jeanty, most important player in the game by most accounts. because there is no world where Boise wins the game and Ashton Jeanty does not go off. He has had 6 games of 200-plus yards this year. He had 30, I can't believe this is a real number, he had 33% more rushing yardage than the next closest guy this year. Well, Josh, that's because he played against G5 competition. It's really not. You don't have to, permanently disrespect guys' accomplishments just because they play at the G5 level. He's really good, guys. He would be good no matter where he played this year. He'd be good no matter where he played in any era. And so you think about that, and you think that his stat line will tell the story. His stat line will not tell the story. I'll give you an example. So let's pick a number. Let's say 170 rushing yards. That's a lot. That's a really good day. That's especially a lot against Penn State. So if you tell me Ashton Jeanty's going to run for 170, what did we just prove? What did we figure out? We figured out he's going to have a good day on the ground, but did we figure out how this game's going to go? Because the first thing I would ask is not how many rushing yards he got. That's part one of the equation. How many carries did it take? There's a big difference, guys. There's a big difference in carrying it 31 times for 170 yards versus carrying it 16 times for 170 yards. So that's the first thing I'd want to know. Second thing I'd want to know is, were there explosive runs there? Because in the 16 carries for 170 version of the game, that means there were. And you score on explosive runs a lot of the time. And why that's important is because for Boise, there's this weird style of game that sometimes happens in college football where you're actually in better position at your opponent's 45-yard line to score than you would be if you were at your opponent's 15-yard line. Makes no sense unless you understand the dynamics of certain offenses. And if you're running back centric, for example, closer you get down to the goal line, the more the field compacts, the more they don't have to honor the pass. It gets really tough to score down there. So if you've got a guy that's really good, like Arizona State has and like Boise has it, popping explosive plays, sure, you'd love to be in the red zone. You'd love for it to be first and goal. But there's also this sense when you're in plus territory just over the 50, that's your go zone. That's the point right there where you may actually be the most dangerous. So if they pop those, that's great. If they don't, then do they score when they get in the red zone? And also, do you continue to do what you've done all year, and that's leading FBS in explosive runs? Because the freeze point theory is in effect here as well, and that is they have faced no run defense close to Penn State. That doesn't mean Penn State is impenetrable. They're just a lot tougher outfit to run on. It's the number 7 run defense in the country, and then you add in the fact that they probably don't have to overly fear the pass. I mean, right now, Maddox Maxon, 208 per game. That's what he's done through the air this year. That pass rush for Penn State's very strong. So those are 2 areas where I think it's all or nothing. And, Maddox Maxon actually has probably the chance to be the hidden star in this game. He's a 62% completion guy. He's thrown 3 picks this year. Like, he's been good. But Exhibit 3 on my scale of all or nothing is if Ashton Jeanty is his usual self versus if Penn State grabs an early lead and forces 3rd and long. Because in the first iteration of the game, well, it's Boise in their comfort zone. Even if it's back and forth, it's Boise in their comfort zone. But if Boise's having to play catch-up, it's kind of the same way that we just talked about Notre Dame for similar reasons. If they're forced to play catch-up, I don't love the dynamic. I don't love the matchup either way for Boise. And there's a lasting thing, too. Colin, you can go ahead and throw the model up if you want to. Penn State's favored by 11.5 in this game right now. So I got to tell you something. I have a theory in this game. We got to test this theory out. I got a theory in this game that it benefits Penn State more than it benefits Boise. I would rather see Penn State play Boise in Phoenix, in Glendale, than I would in State College. I think that cold weather affected Penn State's offense every bit as much as SMU. I love where Penn State's offense has been trending, and you saw it in the second half of the Big Ten title game. I get to see them in a controlled climate the rest of the way, no matter how many more games they play. I think that offense is peaking at the right time, and I think they're going to put a little bit of pressure on Boise here because I don't think it's going to be your normal relying on Penn State's offense to not be able to get out of their own way. And even if we're not converting, don't worry, they won't run away from us. I think Penn State's going to put some pressure on Boise. I think they're going to force Boise to score, force them to keep up. We got Penn State minus 11.5 at FanDuel. The model has Penn State minus 12. I think Penn State's going to win and cover. I think you will see the best game Penn State plays all year in this game right here, which would mean they move on. And whatever they do after that's whatever they do. But the best game they played all year, whatever you think that is, I think it will be topped. I think they will peak and play their best game here. Really love Penn State in that game. All right, let's go. Let's go and let's talk about what I got probably asked about 150 or 200 times last night. I'm sorry, I'm just looking over at the live chat. There's some shock that I picked a double-digit favorite to win a game. Guys, I love it. Upsets happen, man. I'm a believer that upsets aren't going to happen in this format. Big upsets, I don't mean a 3-point underdog winning, but big upsets I don't think are going to happen. But we'll see. Like Mark just said, hey, picked a favorite. Shocker. Mark, would you like me to pick the underdog that I think is going to lose the game for the sake of entertainment? I'd prefer to be right. And as we all know, Mark, if you're not aware, pay attention. This is a crazy stat, but it's true. I'm undefeated picking games this year. Hold on. I'm not finished. Immunity. I am undefeated picking winners this year in games that kids, coaches, and officials did not screw up. So when I've picked a winner, they've either won or they were supposed to win, but a kid or a coach or an official screwed it up. And I'm not responsible for players or coaches or officials not doing their job. So I am undefeated this year, Mark. So before you get all sassy over there in the comments, you need to recognize that you're in the presence of perfection with an asterisk. But basically, I am perfect on the year. Cam Ward opted out of the second half of a bowl game, and a lot of people are up in arms about it. I got asked about this a bunch. We were not going to put it in the show, but now it's in the show. So Cam Ward, if you're unaware of what happened, Kublik stole the show in the Pop-Tart Bowl. But the solid subcontext was Iowa State came back and won the Pop-Tarts Bowl because, in no small part, Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, played the first half, threw the ball all over the place, and then opted out of the second half. There was no immediate information available on what had happened. Like, did he inform Mario coming out of the tunnel, hey, I'm out, here's my helmet? Was there a fight in the locker room? Did he get benched? Probably not. There was no information ahead of time. Well, I'll give you the information. This was planned ahead of time. This was known ahead of time. That shouldn't shock you, but if it does shock you, it was known ahead of time. This was not a surprise to anyone except maybe if you were watching at home, because Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson did not have the foresight to let the entire public in Iowa State know what their game plan was. So, yeah, I've got thoughts on this. I will share them with you. I got no problem sharing these with you. The way I look at college football bowl games these days is I've got what I wish they were, which is fairy tale land, and then I've got what reality is. And reality is like Shawshank, and that is college football is no fairy tale world anymore. Bowl games are no fairy tale world. And so there was an argument that was being made by the Cannells of the world yesterday, but he was not alone for once. And it was, how could you go out there, play a half, and then not want to go finish the rest of the game, especially when this was back and forth. Like, this was back and forth down to the very end. And there was an ISO shot on the ESPN camera feed every other play of Cam Ward helpfully just standing on the sideline. That ate at me as well as it did anyone else. Before I tell you what my thoughts on this are, I'm telling you what my feeling was. My feeling was I'm watching this and I hate this. So if you had a big problem with it, trust me, I get it. And then I saw Cannell and a couple other folks making a valid point, which was, it used to be that if you opted out of a bowl game, it was pretty uncommon. But if you opted out, it was because you were going to be a high-level draft pick, and it was all or nothing. Even before the insurance policies you could take out, you've got millions of dollars on the line. What if you get hurt, and then you cost yourself generational value? Didn't like it, but I got it back then. But what Cannell and them were saying was, you're getting paid 7 figures to play college football now. Plus, they've got insane insurance policies. So you're double covered. There is a huge safety net under you, even if you do get hurt. And also, like, there's just the thought that if you're getting paid big money to play college football, you play college football. You finish. So I'm not going to call you an idiot if you think that way. I see that. You asked me how I feel about this. I'll tell you how I feel about it. The only thing I can do is tell you how I feel, because I fully get people who had a problem with it. But if I'm a Miami fan, I'm what matters. You know, all due respect, what a sports writer thinks about this does not matter. What a Wake Forest fan thinks about this does not matter. What I think about it doesn't matter. But it's my show, so you asked me, so I'll tell you. If I'm a Miami fan, Cam Ward saved my season. I probably lose 3 or 4 more games without that guy. So for everyone who looks at this as a failure, man, I just won double-digit games for only the second time in the past 2 decades because that guy chose to come to Miami. Did we pay him a lot? Yeah. A lot of other folks would have paid him a lot too. But he chose Miami. You know what else he did? He normalized the idea that if you're a big-time quarterback, you can go to Miami, vault your own stock up, because Cam Ward was not going to be a first-round draft pick this time last year. So Miami benefited from Cam Ward. Cam Ward benefited from Miami. Other guys in the quarterback market are seeing that, so that may pay dividends for me down the road. But also, he was worth 3 or 4 more wins this year for me in what otherwise may have been a disastrous season. Because, yeah, we lost to Syracuse. Yeah, we lost to Georgia Tech. Dude, we would have lost to Cal without him. You know, we would have lost to Virginia Tech without him. We were close in a lot of other games. And he was a supreme leader, which is being lost because I think people's lasting impression was, what kind of leader sits out the second half of a bowl? It's not a fairy tale world. I'm not so sure that Cam Ward just made that decision and said, oh, screw it. Whatever happens in the second half happens. Like, I'm pretty sure he sat on the sideline and didn't love watching that happen either. It was the lesser of 2 evils, if you will. He made his decision. Whatever decision he made his decision. I'm telling you as a Miami fan how I would feel, and I would say bowl games are not what they used to be. If I'm a fan, I'm looking at a bowl game, and it is the first version of our spring. That's what I view a bowl game as. So if you told me the dynamic going in was going to be I get Cam Ward for a half, and then you're going to get really, really good competitive film on what may be your starter next year in Emory Williams in the second half, I'd say I'll take that. I hope we win, but if we lose, but in the interim we get a lot of valuable information that lets us know if we've got our guy or if we need to go to the portal to get another guy, then I'm okay with that. Well, that's what yesterday was. That's what yesterday was. So I watched it and did not like it. I understood it. It's not my business what a guy does with his bowl decision. I wish we could go back in time, but we can't. There's no one who wants to go back in time more than me to, you know, the way the dynamic was in the BCS era, but we can't do that. So if it's not a fairy tale world and we recalibrate how we view college football in lieu of that, I don't know what more I could have wanted from yesterday. I'd love for him to play the whole game. I'd love to win the game, but you know what I did learn? I learned I probably don't have my quarterback of 2025 on the roster. That's what I would think if I was a Miami fan. The staff may feel otherwise. And then I would also think to myself, how quickly can we make defensive staff changes? Because that is the last time, if I'm a Miami fan, that I'm willing to watch that happen. Like, it was obvious early on that defense was the Achilles heel of that team, but you can't do anything during the season. But you can do something now. And I'm looking at not the days or the hours portion on my watch, which I'm not wearing. I'm looking at the minutes and seconds portion before things should happen, before action is taken there. So, yeah, I guess it is what it is. I didn't have a strong feeling about it. I'll just say I didn't get up in arms about it. I don't think he cost himself in his draft stock. I don't like that that's the way it is. I accept that that's the way it is. Can't change it. That's where my mind is. Okay, Paper Pop, I've got something important for you people. I'm saving you some money. Pay attention. It's playoff time. I know you guys need tickets. I know a lot of these places are unfamiliar for you. I'm telling you, we got you a discount here. Go to SeatGeek. Use the promo code PateState10 at checkout. That's PateState10 at checkout. I'm getting you a discount no matter what you buy. You could be buying Fiesta Bowl tickets. You could be buying Post Malone tickets. I don't care. Whatever you're going to right now, if you're going to a concert, if you're going to a Broadway show, if you're going to a semifinal game, the tickets are on SeatGeek. and we've got you a discount. And the way I look at that is you're going to something in all likelihood in the next few months. Save money on it. There's no catch. You don't have to sign up for anything. Save money on it. Pate State 10 at checkout, and we've got you a discount there. It's as simple as that. Sometimes when I bring propositions to you on this show, it's very complicated and there are layers, and candidly, you guys come through anyway. But this one's easy. You go decide what you want to do in your social life, and then you go buy the tickets, and then you get to check out, and then you enter Pate State 10, and then it costs you less than it was going to cost you. Voila. Let's move on. Transfer portal. It's all happening. Transfer portal, the dominoes are starting to fall. That's the entire theme as we get closer to 2025. So Fernando Mendoza, that was the quarterback at Cal. Since the last time you and I spoke, he committed to Indiana. This is a big pickup for Curt Cignetti. Hats off to those guys. This is a big move for them. He was a 16 touchdown, 6 interception guy, 6'5", 225. They went and got Rourke out of the portal. They go get Fernando Mendoza for this next year out of the portal. Threw for over 3,000 yards in just 11 games this past year. He was the number 3 quarterback in the portal. So Indiana got their guy. Missouri got their guy as well. So 2 big moves here. These are not blue blood programs. Indiana just made noise for the first time in most of our lifetimes. Missouri, they were thought to be a player this past year, but they got blown out on the road a couple of times and disappeared from sight in the playoff picture. Bo Pribula, who was Drew Allar's backup at Penn State, and who did come in and win them the Wisconsin game this year, he has landed at Missouri. That was the number 12 quarterback in the portal. He's a former 4-star. He's a true dual-threat quarterback. I think he lands at a really, really good fit. I think he understood that. So Eli Drinkwitz, Curt Cignetti, they pulled the levers they needed to, and now all the quarterback dominoes so far have fallen into place. Now, I say so far, and I want to tell you what I mean in a second, but we had 12 quarterbacks out of the top 12 now that have landed. All 12 of them that were highly rated and went into the portal have landed. Aaron Nolan went from Ohio State to South Carolina, so Shane Beamer's got his backup there for Lenora Sellers. Walker White, just in the last few hours, has left Auburn, and he had already left Auburn. He landed at Baylor. So all the top 12 have landed. Now, here's the great big yeah, but. Yeah, the top 12 have landed, but remember the 5-day rule. I'm going to keep reminding you guys of this because no one really fully knows the rules right now. The 5-day rule is it is December 29th. So the portal closed at midnight, like 12 hours ago as we're doing the show. It closed at midnight, but it's not really closed. That just means you cannot enter the portal anymore if your season ended more than 5 days ago. So if you're a Miami Hurricane, you've still got 4 days to enter the portal. You can stay in there as long as you want to. You just have to be in. The deadline was December 28th, but if your game was later, your bowl game was later, or maybe you're in the playoffs, you have 5 days after your season ends to go in the portal. You get that? And then once you go in the portal, there's no deadline for when you have to come out. It's just the academic calendar is basically what you're adhering to at that point. So I say all that to say we may not be done seeing quarterbacks go into the portal. And if you're not watching, if you're listening on podcast, I'm winking. Auburn, they went and got Jackson Arnold, and now they are surrounding him with pretty good wide receiver talent. They went and got Eric Singleton. So he was the kid from Georgia Tech. He was the number 1 wide receiver in the portal, 5 games with a 40-plus yard reception this year. We wondered, could he land at Georgia? Could he land at Ole Miss? Auburn comes in and gets him. It's a big pickup because they also got Horatio Fields. He was the number 9 receiver in the portal from Wake Forest. Cam Coleman's there. Contrary to some false reports on the internet, yes, Cam Coleman's still at Auburn. They've got the number 4 class right now. They were 74th in points per game last year. They turned the ball over too much. So, the transfer rankings right now, LSU, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Auburn, Mississippi State. That's your top 5. But Ohio State's been busy too. They're not going to be in the top 10 because they don't need as much. But they went and got the number 1 tight end and number 4 offensive tackle. The tight end is, Max Clare. I didn't want that backwards. He had 51 catches and 685 yards for Purdue this past year. That's more than the number 2 and number 3 options on that team combined. And so it's just a feeder system, basically. Ohio State, in their own conference, goes and gets whoever they want because they went and got a 6'5", 315-pound tackle from Minnesota. Not the state, the university. And they got C.J. Donaldson, the running back from West Virginia as well. So Ohio State been making some moves. that's been a little bit beneath the radar because they've been prepping for the Oregon game. Like I said, with the 5-day window, you can never assume the portal is closed fully until it's 5 days removed from the national championship game. And at that point, it's closed. The only college football could figure out a mechanism where a thing that closes on December 28th actually closes on January 25th. That's where we are. So I still got something else to talk to you guys about, but just FYI, so we've talked a lot about all these semifinal games, other bowl games coming up. We've been proud to partner with FanDuel all year. They're the exclusive odds provider. I've got some information I'm about to give you because I got some numbers that are on the board that you can bet that are not even games yet. But first, I do need to let you know because FanDuel has let me know. They are well aware that there are a lot of you who want to sign up this time of year. Okay, first rule on this show is do it responsibly or don't do it. Second rule on this show is if you're going to sign up, make sure you get free money while you do it. There is a QR code on your screen right now. You can use that to sign up. You can go to fanduel.com/CFB promotion to sign up. If you go through those mechanisms, they know we sent you. But just know if you're a new customer and you're signing up right now, you pick any game. I don't care if it's the Milwaukee Bucks. You pick any game and you win, you bet $5 to win $250 right now. Just free money. So make sure you take advantage of that, firstly. Okay? Now here's the information I want to give you. Because look, this, I have found, is what fascinates people the most, including the people who do not bet. So you can bet all the semifinal games at FanDuel right now, but that's not good enough. FanDuel looked around and said, well, hey, this bracket, I mean, it's pretty set, so we know hypothetically who could play. They've already got the lines out, guys. So I am holding in my hand, and you're seeing on your screen what the line would be if Georgia plays Boise, Georgia minus 12.5. Well, what if Georgia plays Penn State? Georgia minus 2.5. But Georgia may not win. Josh, what if Notre Dame beats Georgia? Notre Dame would be an 11.5-point favorite against Boise. Notre Dame would be a 1.5-point favorite against Penn State. Well, Josh, what about the other side of the bracket? I thought you would ask that. Texas, if they beat Arizona State and they go on to face Oregon, who do you think would be favored? Texas, short favorite, 1.5 points against Oregon. But what if Arizona State pulls the upset and it's Oregon versus Arizona State? That would be Oregon minus 12.5 against Arizona State. And then your other possibilities, if it's Ohio State versus Texas, Ohio State favored by 1.5 against Texas. And if it's Ohio State versus Arizona State, that's the biggest number out of all these. Ohio State would be about a 13.5-point favorite against Arizona State. So notice, yes, friends, because the format is jacked up, the teams that had the first round byes are the ones who would still be double-digit underdogs even if they went to the next round. That's not their fault. It just is. So there you go. That's information from me to you, courtesy of FanDuel. What I wanted to leave you with this early afternoon is some busted bold predictions. Busted bold predictions are a wonderful thing because I have no skin in the game. It was all you. You guys had to come to me with bold predictions in the summer. We recorded all of them. I put a boldness rating on them. And the ones that are successful, that's great, but that's not fun. The ones that are fun are the ones that crash into the countryside and burn into oblivion, only to be brought back up on the show months later. Here we go. First up, this was from Jeff in Calhoun, Georgia. Georgia and Missouri will play 2 times this year. Now, this was noteworthy because Georgia and Missouri were not on each other's schedules in the regular season. So what Jeff was saying was they're going to play in Atlanta in the SEC title game, already bold, and then they're going to play in the playoff, incredibly bold. I put a 9.75 on this one. Missouri was nowhere close to the SEC championship game. Georgia got there, so this was already dead on arrival. Missouri got blown out by A&M and Bama on the road. They lost to South Carolina, so they didn't go to the playoff either. So that's that. 0 for 1 for Jeff. Next up, this one I was concerned about, but as it turns out, I didn't need to be. Lou from Piscataway, New Jersey said Rutgers will make the playoff. Right now, that sounds crazy. It still sounded kind of crazy in the summer, but remember, what Indiana just did, people were thinking Rutgers may do. So Rutgers was the team with no Oregon, no Ohio State, no Penn State, no Michigan, no Iowa, and no Indiana on the schedule. And it's Greg Schiano, and it's another year into the program. And so even I looked at it, and I said, this is a 9.75 on the boldness scale, but it's not a 10. It could happen. Man, Rutgers still just went 7-6. They started off 4-0, but then they lost 4 in a row. They lost 5 out of their next 7. So it started off promising, but Indiana ended up being what folks thought Rutgers may be. So this one crashed and burned as well. Next up, I only put a 9 on this one. And this one was, I don't know, I didn't think this was, I thought it was bold but not crazy. Caden from Prattville, Alabama. There will be 2 teams that play each other 3 times this year. Ohio State really messed you up, Caden, because if Ohio State had made the Big Ten championship game, this could have happened. So Georgia-Texas is the only matchup that could happen 3 times this year. They played in the regular season. They played an SEC championship game. Ohio State-Oregon played in the regular season. Ohio State, had they not lost to Michigan, would have played Oregon a second time in the Big Ten championship game. They'd both be in the playoff. At that point, it would be basically boiling down to, are they in each other's bracket? Do they have to make it to the title game? Because, see, Georgia and Texas have to make it to the title game. That's the only time that they could play. Is that right, Colin? Or maybe they face in the title game, or they don't face off at all. So this one was a 9. I only put a 9 on that. I really thought we were going to have at least one threefer in the matchups this year. And it's early. It's very early on. That may end up being a norm. Maybe it's not. But it turns out the better prediction would have been we will have no teams face off 3 times. Because it was conventional knowledge, there was a conventional logic that was going to happen at least once. So that would have been the bolder prediction. Good misses. We love a good miss around here. Love a good miss. All right, appreciate you guys. This was an earlier show than usual. I assume a lot of people are going to show up later today and say, what's happening? Why is this replay 6 hours old? Well, we had travel. I don't know what to tell you. We had travel. I'm going to be out in Pasadena this week. I may do a podcast only. I may drop you a mailbag this week. We're not doing another show like this until Thursday. We'll be back in Nashville. We're going to red-eye back from L.A. We'll be back in Nashville. So Thursday show, normal. May have something extra for you during the week. No promises. Stay tuned. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and the pod if you're not already. For Director Colin, Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.